Hello and welcome. This is Kaczmar and you're watching Geek Factor. Today I'll present you with a how to play video. This is for a game called Hunters. Hunters is a game designed by Mateusz Albrecht, and this game is about to go live on Kickstarter. I don't know the exact date of the Kickstarter launch. I don't know when you're watching this. If the Kickstarter is already on, then I will provide a link to the Kickstarter in the description below. I will also provide a detailed index of what to find where in this video in the description below, because I presume that this is quite a lengthy video. This is a big game. It is set in the future where humanity has become so technologically advanced. It was able to invent machines, huge powerful machines with huge artificial intelligence capabilities that can do massive amounts of work for us. But well, we weren't that lucky. Meteorites struck and a nuclear winter has swept throughout the globe. Now we had to go and hide underground. But the machines, they were able to stay on the surface. Now after a few years, the first rays of sunshine start to come through the clouds, and we finally get the courage to try and come up and search for things we need to survive on the surface. However, those machines that we left behind, those machines with this very developed artificial intelligence, they're still out there. They are still out there, and they're hunting us. And we're scavenging for anything we can find to stay alive. So this is what this game is. This is the theme of this game. Now, like I said, this is a campaign-driven game, which is where you have scripts, you have a mission book that you're going to go through. And we are going to start with a setup, because the way you play the game is quite unique. We will begin with the general setup. Also, one thing I want to mention, a few caveats. First of all, I am working on a prototype right now, so obviously not all elements are final. Not all illustrations are final. The component quality isn't final. Also, the prototype is entirely in Polish, and you have to know this game is very dependent on text. There is a lot of text on the cards, for example. So when I'll be doing close-ups on various things, you will be seeing a lot of text in Polish. But I know for a fact that obviously this game will be translated. Just for now, we are working off of a Polish prototype. And some things, okay, bear in mind please, some things are also subject to change, some things in the gameplay. I am also not going to go very deep into the specifics, because I know that those are likely to change when they're going to be testing this game during the Kickstarter. So I'm going to give you the basic feel of what the game plays like, and I hope that will help you make your decision. Also, I keep all the tokens in those plastic containers. These are mine, these do not come with the game, sorry. Although that would be a cool stretch goal, I think. Anyway, that's it for the intro. Let's get with the setup. So the first thing you do when setting up the game is each player obviously picks a character. And once they do that, they take the corresponding player board and the corresponding plastic miniature. The second thing we take a look at is the experience. Let's take a look at those two markers. Now the general idea for that is that this one in the final version will be hollow, and this little thing will fit right inside. Now why would we do that? Because this one tracks your health, this one tracks your experience. You track both of these on this track right here. These numbers here from 1 to 6 are referred specifically to your experience. Now you begin the game at experience 1. Now throughout the game you will be able and you will gain chances to increase your experience level. We'll get to that later in the video. Now with the health marker you begin at maximum health. Now what is maximum health? Throughout the entire game your maximum health will always be your current experience level. So at the beginning of the game, you put both of these here at level 1. Now throughout the game, you will obviously lose health, you will be able to regain it, but you will never be able to go over your maximum level, which will always be the same as your experience level. So at the beginning, we put both of these right here. Then we take a look at starting equipment. Now starting equipment is listed right here, and we put all those items mentioned here right here on our, let's say, on our character. Now the way that works, what we put where in these slots, I will go over that later on in the video, but for now just remember matching them by the icon. For example, this is your equipment, we put it right here. This is your weapon, which means we put it right here. Finally, we take the morale tokens in the number listed right here on the player board, so that means we get the 1 morale token. What is also directly connected to your experience level are your action cards. At the beginning of the game, you take all your action cards, but you only take the ones which have the Roman numeral 1 at the bottom left corner, because this refers to your current experience level. At the beginning of the game, your experience is at level 1, which means we take the cards with number 1. We take all the other cards, for example, cards with number 2 right here, and we set them aside for now. You will be able to get those later on in the game. We will also talk about that later on in the video. You then take the base board and you place it in the middle of your playing area. Well, not in the middle, I will get into that in just a second, but somewhere within the reach of all players. Now you take the time marker and you place it on the time track right here on the board. Now we have rooms. There are 5 types of room. Each type is indicated by the icon in the top right corner on the room card. Now every room has 3 levels. The first level, the second and the third level. Obviously at the beginning you can only have rooms at level 1, and then you will be able to advance throughout the game. But in order to get even the level 1 rooms, you still have to build them in your base. But just so you don't start the game with nothing, what you do is, as a group, you discuss which of these rooms you would like to place in your base, and then you take the corresponding room's level 1 card and you place it somewhere on the board. Now the rooms will do various things, but mostly they will allow you to build very useful experience, weapons and other things of that sort. Now what you can do with the other room cards is you can keep them separated like that to keep them neat and then to place them quickly on the board. But trust me, you will need room on your table, so I suggest making a single deck out of all the room cards, place it somewhere near the board and then just take the room cards that you need from this deck. Near your gaming area, you place your decks of cards. Now we have your event cards, and then we have your road cards divided into categories 1, 2 and 3, indicated by the number of skulls right here on the back of those cards, and the city cards. Now the city cards and the road cards, they are double-sided, so and both sides matter for gameplay. Now in order to not spoil the fun for yourself, we keep this single sheet on top of the deck so as to keep all those cards covered up. We also have enemy cards, we have instruct manual cards that will allow you to build equipment and weapons, and then we have implant cards. Now what you do now is you set up the first locations which you can go to from your base. What you do is you set them up right here, right above your base. This will be known as the locations, so-called level 1, which is going to be the closest to you. The locations come in form of the event cards, number 404 through 408. We set them up like so. We have 404 right here, 405, 406, and so on and so forth. You set them up in a line like so, and this is going to be the location closest to you. When the time comes, you will place second location right here and so on and so forth. Now, when situations like this happen, what we have here is the location card, and then it shows 4 place cards that are placed next to it. So that means that this is basically the location, the so-called region, and here are the places where you can go to in that region. Another thing you do during setup is you take event cards 501, 504, 506 and 508 and you place them underneath this card 404. Then you take event cards 001A, B and C and you place all 3 of them right here on top of the 404 event card, the location card. So like I said, this is the closest location to you, the closest one to the base. The further we go from the base when it comes to locations, the more dangerous it's going to be for you to go there. Now you place the hunter's marker in the base because that's where you will begin your journey. You then place all your tokens like experience points tokens or wound tokens somewhere nearby. Okay, so now that we've set up the game, let's go over it. Now, what I mean when I say go over it, what we have started doing at Geek Factor lately is after we've done the setup, we give you a quick overview of the game. What is the main goal? What will be happening during the game? But literally in like 2-3 minutes. So let's get back to the table and let me give you a general overview of what the game is like, because what the game is like, how the game plays in between completing particular missions is very important to understand, and I hope this general overview will help you. Now, like I said, you have to leave some space open right here next to your base board, to your player boards, and to the location cards you have set up. Why? Because like I said, this game is played like a campaign. So this means there are basically two modes of playing the game, both of which you are playing when you're playing the game. What I mean by that is there are things you can do in your base, like you can develop your base by discarding resources and placing more location cards in more room cards, in your base, or developing the room cards that are already there in your base in the first place. You can go as a team to one of those locations and you will travel to gain resources, to find some more equipment, some useful weapons. And you will be going through all of that, and then every now and again you will be asked to complete a mission. And that will direct you to a specific mission in the mission book that comes with the game. Now when that time comes, you will take a look at the mission and you will set up a whole new playing board right here next to your general playing area. So this is what I want you to understand, that this whole game is divided like so. First you start here at the base and you decide what you want to do. And right here, when you're playing it like so, when you're in the base, developing the base, when you're going through different locations, you are not really having, you don't really have any player turns because you make decisions as a group. For example, hey guys, what do you say we develop this room to make it a level 2? Or guys, what do you say we go here to the pub and try to buy some stuff that maybe we could use maybe you can use later on. These are decisions you make as a group and you perform those actions as a group. But don't worry, the game will let you know when it's time to complete a mission. Because when you're doing that, and most often when you're traveling through different locations, you will be resolving event cards. And those event cards will either direct you to other event cards, or they will direct you to complete a specific mission from the mission book, which is where you pause and you take out the mission book, you take out the necessary mission components, you set them up right here, and then you play through the mission. Now, the way you play missions is a lot more familiar, because what you do is you have a number of turns. Each turn, the characters take turns performing actions, then the enemies perform actions, and so on and so forth until the mission is completed, either by completing the mission or by the time of the mission running out. After completing the mission, you gain your rewards, and then you return to going to your base, going through various locations, and so on until the game ends. So this is what I wanted you to understand first and foremost. Right here, you decide what you want to do. You want to expand? Expand. You want to travel? Travel. Resolve any event cards that you run into along the way. You may have to complete a mission. You go to the mission book. You find the mission that you are asked to complete. You set it up right here according to the instructions you can find in the mission book. And then you complete the mission by playing through it in a number of turns specified in the mission book. That's basically in a gist how you play through the game of Hunters. Now obviously completing the entire game is going to take a lot of time, so there are possibilities to save your game in between missions. For example, when you complete few missions, you say, okay, that's enough for tonight, so let's save the game and then return to it later on. Okay, so now with the general overview out of the way, let's discuss particulars. Now, let's begin with the things you'll be doing outside of the missions, okay? Because like I said, completing missions is quite familiar, right? You have player turns, you perform actions. But the things we do around the missions, right? The traveling between locations, developing our base. Let's get into the specifics of those actions that we will be performing as a group in between performing the missions. So the first thing we will discuss is the expansion, the evolution of your base. Now the way that works is, like I said, by placing and developing rooms. Now what you can do is obviously, whenever you want to build a room, you always start with the level 1. The way you do that is you take a look at the back of the card and it shows you the resources required to this card in order to place that card in your base. Basically start building that room. Now once you've done that, you take the card, you discard the components mentioned right here, you discard them into the general resource area, and you place the room right here. You can place it with the backup at the beginning, and then you place the construction token of the type of room you are building right now within the number of spaces from the current position of your time marker, equal to the number of time units specified right here. What I mean by that is you place the room here, it says it takes this component to build it, you went, you discarded it, then it takes 5 days to build this room. So you take the construction token that shows the type of room being built, you take a look at your time marker, see where it is on the time track, and you count 5 spaces from it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is where you place the token for this room. Now, the time marker will move, and once it moves onto the spot with this token, you put aside the token and then you flip the room card, and now the room is considered to be built. Now, the same rules apply when you're trying to develop the room, when you're trying to make it another level. Now the way that works is also you take a look at the back of the card of the next level. Right here we have the first level on the board, so we take the second level card. We take a look at the components required to this card in order to start expanding the room. So we take 2 of those components and we discard them as shown right here. And then we take how much time it will take to develop that room. It will take 7 days. So we take a look at where our time marker is right now. We count 7 from there. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we place the token here. And the same thing applies. Once the time marker moves into the appropriate position, this token is discarded and the room is now at a second level. Once you've done that, you remove the previous card, obviously, and you place the current card of the current level. Now, what is important here is that in order to start the building of a room or the evolution of a room, the hunter's token do not have to be in the base. And by that I mean that our characters do not have to be present in the base. The resources needed to build that particular room or to develop that particular room have to be in the base, however. And how do they get in the base? Obviously, you will acquire various resources, various equipment when you go on your many travels. And then when you return to the base, you will be able to drop off all the resources and all the equipment you find along the way in your base. So your base is not only a space for to build your rooms, which will help you develop and engineer very useful stuff, but it's also a place where you get to store your equipment or your resources, which you can use later on. Now, like I said, in order to place those resources here, you have to move the hunter's marker here. But once you've placed those resources over there, the hunter's marker can be somewhere else and can be on a location card, and you can still start building or developing a room. Right here is also when I want to talk to you about the passage of time. Now, like I said, the area right here when you get to build rooms or visit various location cards, like this one for example, this is the area where the gameplay is not divided into a commonly known turns or rounds. But sometimes, for example, the rulebook will tell you about something that happens at the beginning of a game round, even though it is something that obviously happens during that phase of the gameplay. Now, when the rulebook says something like that, what it means by saying beginning of the game round is every time the time marker moves by a single spot, which means a single day. Now, the time marker will move due to various effects. I will mention some of those in this video. Others will probably be mentioned in various event cards or on various missions. Now, when the time marker gets to the number 10 spot or the number 20 spot, on the number 30 spot, you will have to resolve particular event cards. Furthermore, once it gets to the number 30, the time marker will flip. Now, this is a prototype, so there is nothing here on the other side, but in the finished product, it will say 30 right here. And then you will continue going from number 1 to number 30 as well. So you will have 10, 20, 30, and then 40, 50, 60. So you will have 60 days to complete the campaign. Now, every time the time marker gets to the top spot of those three columns right here, so whenever it gets to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60, you have to get into your event cards deck, and then you have to resolve particular event cards. When it gets to number 10, you have to resolve event card number 610. When it gets to 20, you have to resolve 620, 630, 640, 650, 660. Those event cards will tell you what needs to happen. Another thing that you will be able to develop and build is equipment. That's right. Sometimes you will simply gain equipment or buy equipment, but sometimes you will be able to construct it on your own. But you won't be able to do it without one of these. These are the instructions, the manual cards that will tell you what you need to build this particular equipment. In this case, we have an axe. Now let's say you got the manual card for an axe, you brought this here into your base, and now you want to construct it. How does that work? First of all, the card specifies what room you need to have and what level that room has to be on. So it shows this type of room at level 2, which is what we luckily have. Now it also shows the type of resources you have to discard in order to build that equipment. Luckily we have those as well, so because we have the manual and the resources in the base, we do not have to be personally present in the base in order to start building that equipment. But we did have to be here in order to drop the resources and the manual card right here in the base in the first place. But now we want to start building it, so what do? We discard the necessary resources required to build this particular equipment. Once we've done that, we take the necessary construction token and we place it on the leftmost space on this track on the card of the room that is required to build this particular equipment. So we place it right here. Now at the beginning of every game round, and by that remember I say every time the time marker moves by one spot, this here will also move by one spot to the right. Now once it reaches the level shown right here at the top of the manual card, that equipment will consider to be built. You can remove the construction token, you can remove the manual card, and you can take the specified equipment and you can place it in your base. Next time when you're in the base, you can take that equipment and you can equip one of your characters with it. So that's how you build equipment. Now let's go over the concept of traveling around the post-apocalyptic world of the game Hunters. Now the way that works is you have your base and then you have various zones which represent various places and locations outside away from your base. Now generally speaking, there are 3 zones that you will be traveling through. Now the zone that is closest to your base is zone 1. This is where you at the beginning you set up the first location, the first location. Now the next zone, which is a bit further away, is zone 2. And the furthest one is zone 3. Now the way that works is in each zone you can have multiple locations. For example, for now here in zone 1 we only have the one location. Now each location can have few places. For example, this location has 1, 2, 3, 4 places that you can go through together as a group. Now I know that it might seem confusing, but try to remember there are 3 zones. The one that is closest to you, that is the one that is least dangerous to go to. The middle one, zone 2, then the furthest one, zone 3. Within each zone, multiple locations, and in each location you have a few places that you can go to. Now, traveling between those zones is important because you will want to travel. Now, for the purpose of traveling, you treat your base as, let's say, zone 0, because you might have to draw various road cards or city cards as a result of a dice roll. Because every time you go to a zone, you roll the dice, and on a result 1, 2 or 3, you pick up and you resolve one of the cards. Now, which cards? Whenever you travel to zone 1, be it from the base or be it from another zone, you roll 1, 2 or 3, you pick one of those cards and you resolve what's happening on them. Then, whenever you travel to zone 2, you pick one of the road cards with 2 skulls, and then when you travel to zone 3, you pick and resolve one of the cards with the 3 skulls. Now, whenever you travel in between, within a single location, between places, and you roll 1, 2 or 3 on your die, you pick up and you resolve one of the city cards. And for the purposes of this, we also have to remember that this is also between, if you have various locations in a single zone, if it is zone 1 and you're traveling between locations, you also have to roll the die and you also have to check and resolve a particular road card, a specific road card designated to that zone whenever you roll 1, 2 or 3. So whenever traveling to or between locations in zone 1, you take one of those cards with 1 skull. Whenever traveling to or within location in zone 2, you would roll 1, 2 or 3, you resolve one of the cards with the 2 skulls. Whenever you travel to zone 3 or within zone 3 between locations, you then pick up and you roll 1, 2 or 3, you pick up and you resolve one of the cards with 3 skulls. When you travel between places in a single location and you roll 1, 2 or 3, you pick up and you resolve one of the city cards. Now, the passage of time. Obviously, traveling between locations takes time. So, whenever you travel between locations, 2, for example, locations, each time you do that, regardless of which zones those locations are in, you always move the time marker by 1. When you travel between places within a single location, you do not move the time marker. So that's basically how it works. Don't worry, at the beginning of the game, all you have is the one location set up in zone 1. You will be instructed by the game to set up further locations and further places. Now, as you can see right here, sometimes event cards will be placed on top of location cards. And whenever you want to move to a location that has event cards on top of them, you have to first resolve those cards. Now, you have to resolve the cards that are on top of the location you want to travel to. Now, once you've done that, you can continue exploring that particular location. Now, when it comes to event cards that are below a location, you can, but you do not have to, resolve them. You can leave them here for a future time, for a future visit to this location. You can resolve the event cards that you found on top, you can do some exploring right here, and then after everything you can resolve the cards that are at the bottom. Or you can just leave them here and never get back to them. That is entirely your choice. You don't have a choice when it comes to the event cards that are placed on top of the locations. Now, those event cards are pretty simple. You read them, there's a lot of story here on those cards, you read through them and you do what says on them. Now, sometimes those cards will direct you to a different location or to a different event cards. Now, the way they will do that is through a number of icons that I will not go over through right now because there's just too many of them. But for example, those icons like that, they show you to go to a specific event cards. Now, resolving those event cards is also a surefire way of being led to complete a certain mission. For example, this icon right here says that you have to discard this card after you've resolved it. Now, I've talked about event cards and road cards and other types of cards. I thought I would give you few examples just to give you an idea of what you can find on those cards. Now the way, for example, this card works, as you can see, this is a road card, a level 1 road card. And this is titled basically the travel you have to go through in order to get to a location. And this says basically that your route leads straight across a massive crater that spreads out miles across the foreseeable terrain. And if that wasn't enough, there is a huge storm coming from the west. So now you have a few choices, because the only way across that crater is this very old looking hanging bridge. And if Indiana Jones movies taught us anything, is that old hanging bridges are not really that safe. So you have three options. Option A, option B, option C. Option A says that you decide to stay where you are and you decide to hide in a cave and wait out the incoming storm. Option B basically states that you go through the bridge, but you go through the bridge one at a time. And the second person moves through the bridge only after the first person is already on the other side. So one by one, you cross the bridge. Option C says basically all three of you, I mean the entire band, the entire group, go across the crater through the bridge at the same time. Now once you've made your choice, this icon shows you to flip the card. Once you flipped the card, you can see what happened based on the choice you made. So if you picked choice C, as you can see, nothing happens. You simply move on with the rest of the game. If you picked option A, each player was able to heal one wound and receive a single morale token. So basically, resting is good. And option B means that now you acted safely, you acted responsibly, nothing bad happened to you. So this is a case of a good road card because no negative outcomes for you. But sometimes there will be negative outcomes, you must be ready for that. Now another type of cards I was talking about are the event cards. And sometimes event cards like this. Now sometimes what you will be able to find on those cards are jobs that you will be able to perform, and for those jobs, if you perform them, you will be able to get rewards. Now for example, this job says right here, Mark Harmon is giving you the job, and he says that in a farmhouse located somewhere on the suburbs of New Jensen, every single animal was killed by some other animal probably. Now the payment will be 7 fuel cells if you are able to find and get rid of the predator. Now this says also you have to set up location number 413. So that's what we do. And then it says on top of that location you have to set up the event card 516. Now as I said before, whenever you travel to a location and there is an event card on top of that location, you have to resolve it immediately. So that we do. That is what we do. For example, we decide to go here and then we resolve this card. Now basically what it says here is that the owner of the farmhouse is welcoming us and he is inviting us to join him for dinner. Now we can either accept the proposition or we can say thank you for the meal, let's get over and let's take a look at the crime scenes, right? So basically where all the animal carcasses are. So if we, for example, decide option A, right? We accept the proposal, we have a lovely meal with the host. This icon says that we have to take 2 cards and pick randomly one of them. The 2 cards are numbered 517. So we shuffle them and we pick one of them at random. Now this is an event that you can read out that tells you what is happening through the meal, how he is preparing the meal and talking to you about everything that's happened. And then at the end of the card, as you can see, it says resolve scenario Q01A. And then this icon shows you that you have to discard the card once you've resolved it. So that's how those event cards sometimes play out. You pick up a job, you set up a location, you play out an event, you make choices. What do you want to do? Whether you want to eat first or do you want to get straight to the job? And depending on the choice you make, this is how the story develops. And then finally, you are asked to play through a single mission. Now let's talk about your character for a second. Throughout the game, you will lose health, obviously, because you will get wounds throughout when you go on various dangerous missions. You will be wounded, you will lose some health. Luckily for you, humans at this point in this post-apocalyptic world have gotten pretty good at curing themselves. So with every single passage of time, which means moving the time marker on the time track by one spot, which means with every single day passed, you get cured by one. So you kind of like you cure one wound. Remember, you can never go higher with your health than your current experience level. However, if for some reason your character got poisoned, then you will lose health every time a day passes, and then you will move the health tracker right this way. Now, whenever you regain health, for example, you got rid of the poison and now you're regaining health day by day, you can always increase the speed by which you're regaining your health if you have a first aid kit. In that case, you would not move by one space to the right, but you would move by 2 spaces to the right. If it's done by the medic character, you can even move by 3 spaces to the right at a single round, at a single move. Now, while we're here at the player board, let's talk about equipment and guns. Now, what else do we have here on your player board? First of all, you have your basic statistics, right? Which means your strength, your persuasion, the starting number of your morale tokens, and the maximum number of implants you might gain throughout the game. Whenever you gain implants, you just slide them right like so, right here, and this always tells you how many of such implants which enhance your character some way you can have throughout a single game. Now, everything else right here is your equipment. This is the equipment you carry around with you. So for example, the character of Soldier begins the game by walking around with goggles and a machete. Now, whenever you are at your base, you can always dump the equipment you have right here. You can leave it at your base, and instead of this equipment, you can put in something else. For example, you can take a first aid kit, you can take some armor, or you can take a bigger gun, for example. Now, let's talk about the various types of equipment and the various types of things you can take here whenever you either gain them throughout the game or whenever you go to your base and they are already there and you can just simply pick them up and then put on your character. That's the way it works. Remember, whenever you are at your base, you can get rid of any number of equipment you want. You leave it at the base and then you can take any number from equipment from the base and put it on your character as long as there are 3 available slots that you can put that stuff in. Now remember, the equipment always matches those slots either by the color or by the icon in the top right corner. So we have those type of various accessories, extra equipment that you might use, like for example, first aid kits. Here at the yellow marker, at the yellow slots, for example, we can put a single piece of armor, or like you saw right here, goggles. Now armor is important because whenever you are in a battle, armor is what allows you to get defense dice. Without armor, you do not have any possibility of defending yourself against an attack. And finally, we have weapons. Now, what kind of guns do we have? There are basically 3 types of guns you can have. There are the small ones, which are sidearms. There are slightly bigger ones, which we call basic guns. They take up two slots. And then we have the big machines, the heavy artillery, which are the big ones, and we put them right here. Then they take up 3 slots. Now, since we're talking about the guns, let's talk about the stuff we can see right here. The basic information we have on the guns, it tells you how you can use that particular gun when performing an attack. So the first thing we see, the very top statistic, is the range, which means how far from the target you can be in order to make use of this weapon. Now you can see the range is 5, so you can be pretty far to perform an attack with this weapon. Below that, you see the number of dice you are rolling at a particular range. So for example, with this weapon, if you are at a range 1, so basically if you're standing next to your target, you can roll 5 dice. If you are 5 spaces away from your target, you only roll 2 dice. Now, the bottom statistic is the modifier of the complexity. Obviously, I will talk about complexity, what it means, the difficulty of an attack. I will talk about that once discussing an attack further on in the video. But this is basically how you will modify this difficulty, so it will either make it easier for you or harder for you. Now, finally, what we have space here for on the character board are the accessories. These are the things that you attach to your weapons in order to make them more effective. Now the way you attach those is through those indentations that you see right here, and we see where you can put them right here on your weapon token. So as you can see, it fits nicely right here, and this accessory always enhances the use of your weapon in one way or the other, but also it comes with certain conditions. For example, this one only works at night. This is what is told by this moon icon, and you have to be at range 2 from your target in order to be able to use this accessory. And then you can see how it affects. At the very bottom of the token, it shows how it affects this weapon. So this, for example, adds another 1 to the complexity. Now, as was the case with event cards, there are a number of various icons that appear on those weapon tokens and various equipment tokens. I will not go over them all. I will not go over all of them because that would be far too long for this video. But each and every single one of those icons is explained very well right here in the rulebook. Your armor, for example, shows you the defense values against various attacks. For example, this shield right here with these bullet points in the middle shows you that this is the defense against a ranged attack. Now, from the left to the right, it depends whether this is a ranged attack from the front, from the side, or from the back. This is the number of defense dice you will get to roll when you are under a ranged attack. You will see about how you attack and how the ranged attacks, how the melee attacks work later on when I'll be discussing the missions. We've talked about the evolution of your base. Let's talk about the evolution of your characters. Because throughout the game, you will be able to get experience points. And you will be able to get them as a reward for completing missions, for example, or for destroying enemy figures. Now what you can do with those experience points is, for example, you can spend them to advance on this track. If you want to get to level 2, you begin the game at level 1, let's remember. If you want to get to level 2, you have to spend 20 experience points. If you want to get to level 3, you have to spend 30 experience points. 40 to level 4, 50 to level 5, and 60 to level 6. Now, once you get to the next level, for example, we're going from level 1 to level 2, you take the action cards that are assigned to this particular level. Now, each level has 7 action cards assigned to them. For example, we just spent 20 experience points and then we moved on to the second level. So now what we do is we take the 7 cards from that level, we pick 4 of them and we add them to our action cards deck. The remaining 3 cards are discarded, removed from the game completely. You will not have a chance to acquire them later on. These 4 cards, however, are shuffled into your action, or it doesn't have to be shuffled, you will see why soon, into your action cards deck. Now, like I said, you will gain equipment and various resources through playing through event cards or playing through missions. Now, another way is visiting locations where it is possible to purchase certain equipment. Now, what it says in these columns is the price you have to pay or the price you get for certain equipment. Now, the currency in this game are those fuel cells. Now, to the most right column says how many, let's take a look at the knife, for example. How many fuel cells you have to spend in order to buy a knife. So for example, with the knife, you can't actually buy it, but if you wanted to buy steroids, you would have to pay 4 fuel cells. You would then take steroids from the common supply and you would add them to your character board. Now, however, you can sell knives right here, and if you were to sell a knife, you would get 3 fuel cells for it. But there is another option, as you can see. For 1 fuel cell, you can buy a manual card that will tell you how to build your own knife. And as you know, we can take those manual cards to our base and develop those particular items. Well, that was a lot of stuff, but trust me, it does get easier and it does get a lot more intuitive as the game goes on. So, like I've said, we do all this stuff in between playing through the missions. So, once an event card, for example, tells us, please play through mission such and such in the mission book. We get to the mission book, we find the mission such and such, and we play through it. And we begin every mission, obviously as we begin every other game, with the setup. So let's see how to set up a mission in this game. Now the way you set up for a mission is obviously you take the mission book, you find the appropriate mission, and then you set up the board according to what is shown here. You take the appropriate board tiles and you set them up exactly like it is shown. Then each character, each player takes their character and places them in the area shown, depicted in the mission book. Then what every player does is they take their action cards deck and they hand pick 25 cards. They do not draw randomly 25 cards. They hand pick which 25 cards they want to put in their action deck for this mission. Now from those 25 cards, you take a look at every single one of them and you pick, you do not draw randomly, you pick 5 cards and those 5 cards will make up your starting hand. You then shuffle the remaining 20 ones to make up your deck. But the first 5 in your hand are hand-picked from the entire 25 card deck. We also set up enemy figures, also as shown in the mission book. We also take corresponding enemy cards and set them aside near the board. What you can see on the enemy card is obviously its health value, how much wounds you would have to give it to kill it. Its defense value when you attack it, and the various attacks, as you can see. You can also see the ranged attack right here, and also also the actions it will perform. Whenever it is the turn for the creature to perform their actions, they will perform those actions top to bottom, exactly as specified right here on their card. If they have any special abilities, something that affects a regular gameplay, it will also be specified right here. So, like I said, you set the card aside near the board. Sometimes you will be asked to perform some special preparations, for example, placing some additional tokens somewhere on the board, but that will always be specified by a scenario and by the mission book. Just go by those rules. They are very simple, simple to understand, and you will be able to set up the mission very easily. Okay, so now that the mission is set up, let's see how the mission plays through. Well, first of all, the mission is usually divided into a number of turns. Every mission is always divided into a number of turns, but the number of turns is specifically stated in the mission book most of the times. So most of the times it will be like, okay, the mission lasts for 6 turns, for example. Now the way you play through a single turn is, first, it's the character's turn, so the player's turn. Then it will be the enemy's turn, so the machine's turn. How does that work? When it's the character's turn, first we check for any abilities or any long-lasting effects that either we have to resolve or that expire at this very moment. This is the first thing we check for. Then it's the actions. So we choose the order in which we perform those actions. The player order in which the player sequence in which we perform those actions. And then the first player performs 2 actions, then the second player performs 2 actions, third player performs 2 actions, and then once everybody is done, we move on to the enemies. The enemies do basically roughly the same thing, which is they check for any effects, any abilities that they have to resolve, and then they perform first action, and then they perform a second action. Now, those actions are very simple because they basically involve moving and attacking. Apart from those, there is a special action called interaction, which allows us to interact with our surroundings. Those will I will talk about a few of those when discussing the particular actions, but those will also be noted down. They will be specifically described in the mission book when describing a particular mission. But for now, let's get back to the table and let me show you how to perform actions like movement, like attacks, and what are those pesky and cool looking action cards all about. Let's get to it. Now let's go through the action cards, because the way the characters will perform actions is by playing action cards from the hand. Now, sometimes you will discard the card from the hand and simply perform the action described in the top half of the card. Other times you will discard the card from your hand but will not use it to perform the action that is specified right here. Because there are three basic actions. One basic action is a movement by one space. Another basic action is a melee attack with the difficulty 1. And the third possible action is interaction. Now those three are basic actions, so you can discard any card from your hand and then you can perform one of those three actions. Or you can choose to perform the action described on the card. For example, this here says in Polish ruch o dwa pola, which means movement by two spaces. We will go over how movement and how attacking works in this game in just a second. But there are also cards like this, where you have text on the bottom half of the card. For example, these are the so-called reaction cards. It specifies exactly that you have to be within the line of sight of the enemy figure to which you are reacting. Exactly, playing this card will allow you to interrupt an enemy's movement, and then you can play this card, but you have to be within this particular range in order to be able to react. Now this is a very interesting thing with those blue bottom cards, because whenever you play a card, you can only pick either the bottom one or the bottom half or the top half. Now the way those blue things works with the blue background, they usually enhance other actions that you perform during your turn. Now, for example, this card right here allows you, if you play this card, it allows you to move by two spaces and perform a melee attack with the difficulty 2. So the way you do that is you discard this card and you are able to perform those two actions, right? Move and attack. Now this blue bottom, however, allows you to modify your melee attack by giving you the opportunity to re-roll a single die during a melee attack. So in order to perform it that way, you would have to first discard this card, which gives you the ability to perform a melee attack, and then you discard this one in order to enhance this melee attack. This is how those cards with the blue background bottom work. Remember how the turn goes. You perform your first action, you spend how many number of cards you want to spend, you perform your second action, you also spend cards. After you're done with that, you draw back up to 5 cards so that you have 5 cards in your hand. Now let's go over the particular action. So the first action we're going to talk about is movement. When you move, you can move in any direction, and by that I mean horizontally, vertically, and even diagonally, which means that you can move like so. This is a movement by one spot. Now there are various icons sometimes found on the terrain tiles, on particular spaces on the map. Now those icons are very well described right here in the rulebook. Like I said, not going to go through all those icons because the video will be far too long. I will give you some examples. For example, this shield icon means that whenever a character is on that area and they are the target of a ranged attack, then whoever is performing the ranged attack has the shooting ability diminished by 1. This red dotted line, for example, says that you cannot move into this area, you cannot move through that line. Now even from the picture itself, it's pretty obvious, it seems like quite a big hole that you would not want to fall into. But the dotted red line specifies that while you cannot move into it, you can still see through it, which means it doesn't block line of sight. Now it may be possible for you to move outside of the board. If there is nothing to block your movement right here, you can remove your figure from the board. However, this figure then is considered removed permanently and cannot return to the board until the end of this mission. Now let's talk about a ranged attack. The way a ranged attack works is, first of all, you have to pick a target. Now you can attack any target that is within your range and is not obstructed, and the line of sight is not obstructed in any way. Another thing you have to remember, you cannot share the space with the target, with the enemy that you want to attack through a ranged attack. Now the way you perform a ranged attack is you play a card that allows you to do that. For example, this says ranged attack. The difficulty is specified as 2. So I play this card, I pick a target. Now I check whether it is within range. I pick a weapon that I want to use. Now this weapon, for example, allows me to shoot anything within a 2 range. I see here the value for number 1 and for number 2. So I pick this weapon and I see whether I have any target within this range. I have, for example, everything here is within range 1. Everything here is within range 2. Everything here within range 3, and so on and so forth. This is how the range disperses. So if I see that this is within range and this one is, I then check for line of sight, see if it is obstructed. What I do is I take any spot in this space that I'm in and I pick any other spot in this space that is occupied by my enemy. And I see if I can draw a straight line which would not be obstructed by any items or anything on the board. If it's not, the line of sight is clear, I can attack. Once I've done that, I check for the number of attack dice. Now here it says that for the range 2 with this weapon, the number of attack dice is 3. I take this exact amount of dice. Then I check what is the difficulty of this attack. The difficulty will be specified on the action card, here it says 2, but it will be modified by the weapon. Now as you can see, for a range 1 attack with this weapon, the modifier is +1. With range 2, the modifier is 0. So because I am here 2 spaces away from this enemy, the modifier is 0, the difficulty stays at 2. But if I were here, one space closer to the enemy, the modifier for range 1 would be +1. Also, I would get 4 attack dice and not 3. So let's say this is the case. What I do is I roll the dice. Sorry, this figure falls down quite easily. I roll all of the dice and then I check the dice where I rolled the number equal to the difficulty level after modifying or lower. So if the difficulty level after modifying is 3, I check for any dice that have 1, 2 or 3. Unfortunately, I only have 2 such dice. Those 2 are considered misses. These 2 are potential hits. Then what we do is we go to the enemy card and we check for the defense value. Now, as far as the ranged attack from the front, we have 2 defense dice. So this enemy rolls, you can choose any player to roll for the enemy, rolls 2 dice in defense. Now, any result that is 1, 2 or 3 is considered a successful defense. So in this case, 1 die is a successful defense. This guy rolled 2 potential hits, this creature rolled 1 defense. So 1 defense takes out 1 hit. This enemy, however, was not able to defend itself from this hit, which means it suffers 1 wound. We take a wound token and we place it somewhere near the figure, and just remember to move the wound marker when you're moving the figure. Once you've struck the enemy as many times as is specified on the enemy card, that creature is considered killed and is removed from the game. Now what is important to understand here is that whenever it is the creature's, the enemy's turn to perform their actions, and they perform ranged attacks, the ranged attack works the exact same way. We check for the value of the attack, number of dice, everything is specified right here on the enemy's card. Then we check if our character has any defense dice, because he or she may not have any armor on their character board. Remember, it is always a bad idea to go on missions without any armor. Then the creature rolls the attack dice, and then the character rolls the defense dice, and everything works exactly the same way. The only difference here is that whenever we get the creature's health to 0, that creature is killed. But whenever we get the character's health to 0, that one is considered to be unconscious. And whenever that happens, another character can enter the space and then use one of his or her actions to perform the interaction action. Now, the interaction action in this case would allow you to resuscitate your fallen comrade and allow him to get back into the game but unfortunately only at level 1 health. But unfortunately only with 1 health. Now let's discuss a melee attack. Melee attack works basically in the exact same way as a ranged attack. Now the difference here is that whenever you are performing a melee attack, you have to share the same space. When you share the same space, in fact, the only two options you have for an action is a melee attack or jumping away. Now the way jumping away works I will tell you in just a second, but for now let's focus on the melee attack. Because first of all, you have to use a weapon that has range 0. Now this will allow you to, this is the range 0, so range 0 obviously means the same space as you are, so that is quite easy to understand that you have to occupy the same space as the character you are attacking with a melee attack. But other than that, everything works the exact same way. The difficulty is specified on the action card that you're playing, the number of dice is shown on the equipment that you are using, and you roll the dice. The defense against a melee attack is shown with this icon right here. We roll the attack dice, we roll the defense dice, we see what is the difficulty, we see what was a potential hit, we see how many of those potential hits were thwarted by a successful defense from the victim's side, and that's how a melee attack works. Remember, that's how the melee attacks works regardless whether it is the enemy that is attacking, or which is the creatures, or whether it is the hunters that are attacking. Like I said, a melee attack is one of two possible actions you can perform when you share a space with an enemy. Another possible action you can perform is simply jumping away, which is leaving the space and going to a neighboring space. Now, the way that works is you are free and clear, fine, but your enemy now has a chance to perform a free melee attack. And that melee attack has a difficulty of 1. So it's basically very hard to hit, but it is still possible. Another action you can possibly take is take cover. Now the way take cover works is if you are not within the line of sight of any of the enemy figures, you can take cover action. The way that works is you take the take cover token and you place it on your character board. From now on, that character is he's not exactly invisible, but can only perform particular actions: movement by 1 space and interaction. If he were to perform any other action than that, he would immediately lose the take cover token. Also, this character from now on, as long as he is taking cover, cannot be the target of a ranged attack. And the final action I want to discuss with you is exchange. Exchange can occur between two characters that share a space. When that happens, you can take a single piece of equipment and give it to your friend who is sharing the space with you. That is how exchange works. And that's basically it. Once you've completed the mission, you check for the rewards specified in the mission book, you claim those rewards, and you move on. You build your base, you travel through locations, buying things you might want or you might need, and you play through another mission, and so on and so forth until the game ends. Obviously, you won't be able to complete the entire game in one sitting, so there are possibilities to save the game. And by that I mean particularly, well, first of all, you get those cards that you can then you can note down what level your character is on, what event cards are where, for example. Then you take everything you've collected for your particular character and you put it into separate Ziploc bags. My personal suggestion to you is, we all have smartphones, we all have cameras in our phones. Snap a few pictures of everything you might find useful and necessary and maybe easy to forget in between games, and simply save it on your hard drive or Google Drive or wherever until you play the game the next time. This is how I usually save those types of games. And so that's basically it. You play through it, you play through the mission book, and hopefully you come out on top. I hope everything you've seen here gave you some idea on gave you a good idea of what the game is like, what the gameplay is like. So now you can make an informed decision whether this is something you might want to get interested in. If it is, I strongly suggest you check out the Kickstarter link I provided in the description below. If you have any other questions, any comments you want to make, please do not hesitate to use the comment section on YouTube, and either me or somebody from the publisher will get back to you as soon as humanly possible. For now, I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank Officina Monstrorum for providing me with a prototype. And until next time, see you soon. Thank you for watching and bye-bye.